Rain needles down on the London Exchange. Men clutch gilt bond certificates like lifelines as a distant cannonade becomes a balance sheet. Inside a candlelit counting house, a thin courier hands over a sealed dispatch, information worth more than gold, because it moves capital first. Across the room, Nathan Mayer Rothschild doesn't celebrate. He calculates assets, debts, and leverage. While panic makes even princes feel bankrupt, coins spill onto oak like hail, clerks stamped numbers, not prayers, as war turns inflation into a weapon and credit into a fragile illusion. By sunrise, a new empire will be richer, not by factories or land, but by controlling the story the market believes for 8 minutes. Britain is fighting Napoleon on borrowed money. Government debt stacks higher than chimneys, and one bad auction could trigger national bankruptcy. Every regiment needs pay, every ship needs timber, every cannon needs iron yet. The treasury bleeds, and lenders demand harsher terms. In this era, bonds are the bloodstream of empire. If prices collapse, banks seize assets, merchants fail, and cities freeze. Gold is the ultimate collateral. Control its flow, and you can rescue governments, or squeeze them without firing a shot. Nathan understands the real battlefield: speed, trust, and liquidity, where fortunes are made by who lends last, not who fights hardest. So we rewind, past the smoke of London, to Frankfurt's Judengasse, a narrow lane where families live stacked like ledgers, watched by gates. Young Nathan learns early: wealth isn't coins, it's access. Who you know, what you can deliver, and how quietly you can move. His father, Mayer Amschel, trades rare coins and court favors, building credibility one careful transaction at a time, under constant suspicion. In cramped rooms, letters are written in cipher. Family trust becomes capital, because outsiders can cut credit with a rumor. Opportunity arrives disguised as an order. Nathan is sent to Manchester, where cotton mills roar and profit runs on steam. Manchester is a different religion: machines, wages, and relentless clocks, where assets multiply fast and bankruptcy punishes slow decisions. Nathan buys textiles cheap, sells them dear, and learns arbitrage, turning distance into margin and chaos into predictable revenue. He studies balance sheets like battle maps, inventory, receivables, debt, each line a risk, each risk a chance to leverage. When markets tighten, he doesn't retreat. He extends credit, then demands better collateral, building power through disciplined lending. Back in Frankfurt, his brothers expand the network: Paris, Vienna, Naples, 5 nodes of family capital, one synchronized strategy. Their advantage isn't secrecy alone, it's coordination, pricing the same asset across borders, exploiting delays in news and settlement. Couriers ride through mud and snow. Each satchel carries exchange rates, bills of credit, and the next move before rivals wake. Nathan returns to London with something rarer than cash: a reputation for delivery and a private pipeline for information. He rents modest rooms, then fills them with ledgers, maps, and metal gold bars stacked like silent arguments for trust. London's old money watches him closely. Aristocrats sneer, bankers whisper, yet everyone respects a man who can raise liquidity overnight. Nathan begins by brokering bills, matching buyers and sellers, taking tiny spreads, until volume turns pennies into an engine of wealth. He learns the city's weakness: pride. Many men would rather lose money than admit ignorance about price, risk, or leverage. So Nathan sells certainty, quotes, execution, discretion, becoming the invisible hand behind trades that keep merchants alive and rivals desperate. War intensifies, inflation bites bread, and newspapers print victories late, while markets swing wildly on rumor and fear. Nathan's couriers arrive faster than headlines. He prices risk before the crowd, then positions capital where it will be scarce tomorrow. But speed alone isn't empire. He needs trust from the state, because government debt is the biggest game in town. He offers what the Treasury craves: large, reliable subscriptions for bonds. Money on time, when others demand ruinous interest. In return, he gains influence, preferred access, better terms, and the right to move bullion across borders for the war machine. Gold convoys roll at night. Guards grip muskets as wagons rattle past taverns, because a single shipment can stabilize markets. Nathan ensures shipments, diversifies routes, and hedges exchange risk, turning logistics into finance, and finance into a monopoly of capability. Rival houses try to copy him, but networks take years. Without trust, credit evaporates, and without credit, even lords become beggars. Nathan's method is simple, brutal: control information, control liquidity, control collateral. Then the world comes to you for survival. Yet every advantage attracts enemies: one scandal, one default, one mispriced bond, and the empire's leverage could snap in public. So he tightens discipline, audits, limits, redundancy, because in high finance, sentiment is a fuse and debt is gunpowder. And as London braces for decisive battles, Nathan stands ready, couriers deployed, gold secured, waiting for the moment history becomes a trade. The city holds its breath, Napoleon marches, Wellington waits, and every trader in London wonders which flag will decide tomorrow's bond price. In cramped rooms, clerks sharpen quills; in alleys, runners stretch legs, because the first man with truth controls the spread. Nathan's network fans out across ports and battle roads, buying speed with coin, promises, and a discipline that never sleeps. A courier leaves before dawn, coat soaked, boots split, carrying coded lines that will become leverage inside a London counting house. On the channel, waves batter a small vessel, salt ruins paper, so dispatches hide beneath oilcloth, pressed to a man's chest. Back in London, bond dealers gossip in smoke. Rumours inflate hope, then deflate it, turning confidence into a speculative bubble. Nathan does not bet on gossip. He prepares liquidity, lining cash, and collateral like sandbags before a financial flood. Across Europe, cannon fire shakes windows in ledgers. The same shock appears as widening yields and tightening credit terms. The government's debt auction approaches. If demand fails, interest spikes, taxes rise, and the empire risks a humiliating default. So Nathan offers a simple bargain: certainty today, capital now, while others offer speeches, delays, and excuses wrapped in patriotism. At dusk, riders arrive with torn uniforms and ash on their sleeves. The war is not a story, it is in voices and bodies. Then, one night, the message finally breaks through. The battle is decided, and the market is about to misprice reality. Nathan receives the dispatch in silence. His face remains marble, but his mind races through positions, inventory, and exposure. He walks into the exchange like a pallbearer, letting the crowd read defeat in his posture and fear in his calm. Traders panic. They dump bonds, prices fall, liquidity vanishes exactly when disciplined capital can buy assets at a discount. Behind the theatre, Nathan's agents purchase quietly, absorbing supply, stacking paper claims that will soon become real wealth. When official confirmation arrives, the room flips from despair to euphoria, prices surge, and yesterday's trash becomes treasure. In hours, the strategy converts information into capital, and capital into an empire, without a factory whistle or a cannon. But victory has a second act. The state must rebuild, and rebuilding means more debt, more bonds, more dependence on bankers. Nathan steps into the vacuum, arranging loans, moving gold, and pricing risk, becoming essential like coal to a steam engine. He expands services, foreign exchange, insurance, bullion, and underwriting layers of revenue that diversify risk and deepen control. Competitors complain of manipulation, allies call it genius. Yet the truth is structural advantage, network, liquidity, and trust. The family tightens its cross-border loop. Funds move from Paris to London to Vienna, smoothing volatility like an unseen hand. When a merchant nears bankruptcy, Nathan offers refinancing at a price, turning desperation into collateral and collateral into leverage. He studies crises like weather. Panic is predictable, and he positions for it because inflation and debt never retire. London's elite begins to invite him in behind velvet curtains. They ask for credit and pretend it is friendship. Nathan buys more than assets. He buys influence. Seats at tables where laws, taxes, and monopolies are quietly negotiated. Yet he keeps an accountant's paranoia, double entry books, audits, and reserves. because one scandal can freeze credit overnight. Across town, printers sell pamphlets blaming bankers for high daily bread prices, turning public anger into political risk. Nathan responds with discretion, not speeches. He funds relief quietly, protecting reputation, the most fragile asset in finance. As peace settles, factories surge, steam engines multiply output, and capital seeks projects rail, canals, mines, and anything scalable. Nathan finances the new age, underwriting infrastructure, converting long-term risk into interest payments, and turning growth into predictable cash flow. With each deal, the empire becomes less personal and more systemic. Contracts, syndicates, and networks that outlive any man. But power attracts scrutiny. Parliament debates reform, and rivals push antitrust, like whispers, eerily serious warnings against monopoly finance. Nathan adapts, sharing deals when necessary, keeping control through coordination rather than ownership. Soft power enforced by liquidity. He teaches a brutal lesson. In markets, emotion is expensive, discipline is cheap, and patience is the richest form of leverage. The city now runs on paper promises, credit fuels commerce, and the man who prices credit holds the throttle. Still, the same risk remains. One war, one crash, one default can ignite panic, and every empire built on debt is flammable. So Nathan builds redundancy, multiple routes, multiple partners, multiple vaults, because survival is the first profit of old money. And in the rain, soaked streets as lanterns fade to dawn, London learns the new truth. Information is the world's finest currency. Peace returns, but London's appetite for profit only grows. In smoky clubs, investors hunt yield, like gamblers hunting salvation. Nathan sells certainty again. Government bonds, steady coupons, predictable cash flow, turning war debt into a respectable asset for old money. He forms quiet syndicates, a circle of houses sharing risk, spreading capital and making competitors pay more for the same liquidity. On oak tables, canal maps unfurl, Nathan finances shovels and stone, because infrastructure turns national growth into private wealth. Foreign princes arrive in sealed carriages, asking for loans. Nathan prices their reputations like commodities, converting royal pride into collateral. Across Europe, his brothers mirror his moves. Paris, Vienna, Naples. Each office a valve controlling pressure in the family empire. Bills of exchange travel faster than coin. With paper and trust, the Rothschild network moves capital, while customs officers still count barrels. In candlelit rooms, clerks track exposures, currency, interest, counterparty, because one default can cascade through debts like fire through timber. A rival house over-leverages on speculation. When prices wobble, their assets vanish, and bankruptcy arrives with a polite letter. Nathan watches the wreckage, then buys what others dump: quality bonds. Good paper at discounts born from fear, not fundamentals. By 1825, London is intoxicated, brochures promise mountains of silver overseas, and investors borrow heavily to chase impossible returns. Coffee houses buzz with exotic stock names, inked certificates trade hands like playing cards, and leverage hides beneath polite smiles. Then credit tightens. A single bank refuses renewals, and the bubble shudders, because debt must be paid even when dreams collapse. Crowds surge to counters, demanding coin, tellers stall, doors shut, and panic becomes contagious, spreading faster than any courier. In London, shopkeepers hoard cash, merchants cancel orders, and factories slow. Proof that liquidity is the oxygen of industry. The Bank of England hesitates, then lends. Its vault becomes a dam holding back economic collapse. At a price, Nathan doesn't beg for rescue, he arrives with collateral, offering solutions. Because in crises, power belongs to whoever can fund survival. He extends short-term credit to chosen partners, demanding strong assets. Selective liquidity turns allies into dependents, and dependence into a moat. Behind closed doors, his agents buy distressed bonds. Where others see ruin, he sees mispriced value and future coupons. A merchant faces bankruptcy by morning. Nathan refinances him by night, converting failing inventory into collateral, and collateral into control. Newspapers blame greed for the crash. Nathan ignores the theater, focusing on cash flow, reserves, and the next liquidity squeeze. Gold shipments resume under guard. Wagons roll through fog. Because restoring confidence is not speech. It's metal delivered on time. The panic breaks, but scars remain. Weaker houses vanish, and survivors learn the same lesson. Leverage kills the unprepared. Nathan's reputation hardens into myth. The man who can find money, and myth attracts. Deals like smoke attracts moths overnight. In United Kingdom salons, politicians debate reform. Some demand restraint, others demand expansion. But all need capital to govern. Caricatures appear in shop windows, bankers as puppeteers, because when inflation hurts, crowds seek a villain more than an explanation. Nathan responds with distance. He keeps meetings private, voice low, paperwork perfect, treating reputation as the crown jewel of assets. He widens into industry, mines, rail proposals, insurance, and foreign exchange, multiple revenue streams that cushion shocks and compound wealth. At night, his clerks reconcile ledgers, double, entry bookkeeping is boring. But boredom is how empires avoid bankruptcy forever. He trains successors relentlessly, measure risk, demand collateral, never confuse headlines for fundamentals. Because markets punish sentiment with interest. In grand halls, doors once closed now open. Old aristocracy offers titles. But Nathan values influence, access to decision. Makers, he begins funding governments beyond Britain, pricing wars and peace alike, turning sovereign debt into a tradable commodity. Across Europe, his couriers deliver nightly reports. Speed shrinks distance, and distance once protected rivals from competition anymore. Nathan builds reserves like fortress walls. When credit freezes, he can lend, buy, and negotiate from strength alone. The family empire now resembles infrastructure, invisible until it fails. Payments, settlements, and trust flow through their private channels. And that is the modern lesson. Build networks before you need them. Because in crisis, relationships become liquidity. Today's markets use screens, not candles, but the mechanics are identical. Information, leverage, and confidence. Then panic returns again. Nathan's story isn't about one trade. It's about system design. How to turn volatility into profit without gambling the empire. But every empire invites resistance. Lawmakers, rivals, and jealous elites begin asking the dangerous question: who truly controls the capital? In the next chapter, Nathan faces the price of dominance, scrutiny, sabotage, and political backlash, while Europe's next crisis quietly loads the gunpowder. By now, Nathan Mayer Rothschild is unavoidable. His credit touches everything, so enemies stop debating markets and start attacking legitimacy. In taverns and drawing rooms, the same sentence repeats. No one man should hold this much capital, as jealousy masquerades as morality. Pamphlets multiply, ink turns into knives, accusing manipulation, monopoly, and corruption, because paper is cheaper than proof and louder than nuance. Clients grow nervous, not about solvency, but optics, because reputation is collateral, and collateral decides whether liquidity shows up on time. A committee summons bankers for testimony. Questions sound polite, but the intent is sharp. Expose leverage, expose networks, expose power. Nathan answers with arithmetic, not emotion. Assets, reserves, exposures, making suspicion look childish beside disciplined bookkeeping and clean settlement. Still, rivals plant rumors of insolvency. A whisper can widen spreads overnight, and spreads can suffocate even strong balance sheets. So Nathan runs a demonstration. He pays in hard coin, on schedule, publicly turning skepticism into silence through visible proof. He tightens terms, more collateral, shorter maturities, because in political storms, Long promises become traps, and debt becomes a fuse. Then he pivots to influence without spectacle, quiet dinners, quiet alliances, quiet philanthropy. Power that looks like manners, not conquest. The real defense is diversification. If one market freezes, another breathes. Foreign exchange, bullion, insurance, infrastructure underwriting. He builds redundancy into operations. Multiple couriers, multiple routes, multiple signatures. So one scandal can't collapse the machine. Every night, clerks reconcile positions. Errors are hunted like criminals, because a single mispriced asset can ignite bankruptcy by morning. Nathan's office becomes a fortress of process. Audits, limits, reserves, boring words that keep empires alive when headlines scream. Meanwhile, politicians argue over reform. Markets hate uncertainty. So uncertainty becomes opportunity for anyone holding liquid assets and patience. Nathan begins pricing political risk like weather probabilities, not opinions, because ideology shifts. But debt still demands repayment with interest. When unrest sparks abroad, bonds tremble, crowds can topple statues, and suddenly sovereign promises look like fragile paper. Rivals retreat, hoarding cash. Nathan steps forward selectively, lending against strong collateral, buying distressed assets without falling in love. He refuses sentimentality in finance. Sympathy is expensive, discipline is profitable, and leverage is lethal when the crowd turns. The lesson spreads through London's elite. Whoever controls liquidity during panic writes the terms when calm returns. But power demands constant feeding. Governments need refinancing, and refinancing means more debt, rolling obligations forward like a wheel. Nathan negotiates rates with a calm smile behind it, his leverage, access to capital that no minister can replace quickly. He arranges syndicates to share risk, then quietly leads them. Leadership in old money is deciding the price, not shouting it. Critics call it monopoly. Supporters call it stability. Markets call it a backstop, because someone must absorb fear when it spikes. Nathan understands the paradox. The public hates bankers, yet depends on them because modern commerce is built on credit. So he invests in legitimacy, public works, charitable funding, quieter partnerships, turning social trust into a protective moat around capital. He also invests in successors. An empire that dies with its founder is not an empire, just a lucky season. Each successor learns the same commandments: protect reserves, respect risk, demand collateral, and never confuse a headline with fundamentals. Years pass, the machinery endures couriers, contracts, settlements, until the network feels less like a business and more like infrastructure. And that is the blueprint. Build the pipes before the flood, because in crisis, relationships become liquidity and liquidity becomes empire. Today, the candles are screens, the couriers are fiber, but the playbook remains. Information first, capital second, profit third. High earners don't chase noise. They manage exposure, diversify assets, limit leverage, and keep reserves for the moment others panic. Because when markets fall, the real question isn't who was right. It's who can buy without begging for credit. Nathan's edge wasn't magic. It was logistics, discipline, and reputation. Three boring pillars that outlast any fashionable strategy. In every era, someone tries to build wealth with shortcuts. History punishes them with bankruptcy, while patience compounds quietly. So if you want old money, study structure, networks, cash flow, collateral, and the calm to act when crowds can't breathe. The rain still falls on cobblestones. The exchange still hungers. Only the costumes changed. Top hats replaced by tailored suits. And somewhere in that continuity lies the warning. Empires built on debt survive only if leverage is respected, not worshipped. Because the moment you believe you control the market introduces a crisis you didn't price, then collects interest. This is how a banking empire is built. Not by bravado, but by disciplined capital ready, liquid, and ruthless when history knocks.